Shalom. First and foremost, I have to give all the praises, honor, and glory unto the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rukah HaKadash. I like to say double honors and respect to my apostles and elders, a great millstone, who rule well and taught us His truth. I would also like to say much love, peace, and salutations to the Lord's elect, the hopeful elect in the 1/3. This is Brother Salah. All right, in today's video lesson, it's gonna be food riots are gonna happen worldwide, right? And we're gonna spiritually connect to what this Jake has to say about these coming food riots, right? But so I'm just gonna play a little bit and then I'll pull out one precept. But of course, before we play the video, we're gonna get the copyright disclaimer, and it says here disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use, for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Alright, so we're just going to play a little bit of the first part of the video. I'm not going to play all of it, I'm just going to play some important portions. You brothers can watch the rest if you want.
If this continues, we're going to have food riots across the world, including America. Now, the Strait of Hormuz situation is making things much worse because a lot of energy comes out of the Middle East through that area and goes to the rest of the world. What that means is that the access to fertilizer is going to be very limited. So a lot of these countries' ability to actually grow crops is going to be limited. That's going to create a famine situation across the world. And here in America, the prices are already too damn high. People go to the grocery store and they can't afford all this stuff. People have to turn to credit just to really buy groceries.
All right, so that takes us to Revelation chapter 6, right? We're going to start at verse 1. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and we know that's Yahweh Shai, right? And I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering to conquer, right? And this is Yahweh Shai, man. When he comes back, to take the kingdom from Esau, Edom, along with the 144,000, and right, and his host of angels, man. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see," and there went another horse, and that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword. And we know that red horse is talking about none other than Esau, Edom, man. Who took peace away from the earth ever since. He came back into power in the Renaissance. After the Dark Ages, right? Went forth deceiving the other nations, man. As it says, as it says, in Revelation, right? And 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 a little bit before. Or which I believe in it mentions in Genesis that he was he was the serpent that deceived Eve, and he's that same serpent that went throughout the whole earth, deceiving the nations on who he is, because Esau suffers from that curse of Cain, because he was Cain, and fugitive and vagabond, meaning what, he has to hide himself. He can't rule and say he's Esau Edom. He has to take the guise of another name, right? Rome, the Greeks, the Romans, the so-called Americans, so-called white people, so-called European people, or whatever, man. He can't rule as Esau Edom, because once the world finds out who he is, man, that's basically when his kingdom goes down, right? Figure out who the enemy is, and Israel coming back into remembrance. All right, verse 4, and there went on Slakia. Verse 5, and he opened the third seal and said, "Come and see." Yeah, I heard the third beast say, Slakia, let me say it again. And when I had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine," right? And and that's the main point I want to bring out, right? Is a measure of wheat for a penny, and if you go into that word penny, right? Let's actually get this in the Blue Letter Bible. And if you go into the Strong's for the word penny, that's in the Greek. That is
Strong's G 1220. Denarion. Denarion.
denarius containing 10, right? A Roman silver coin in New Testament time. It took it took its name from being equal to 10 asses, a number after 217 BC increased to 16 about 3.8 gram, 3.8898 or 3.9 or roughly grams of point 3 or 4 ounces of silver or ounces. It was a principal silver coin of the Roman Empire from the table of laborers in the vineyard. It would seem that the denarius, when it was ordinary, it paid for a day's wages, right? So basically, right, for a price of wheat, for a loaf of bread or whatever you're buying at the grocery store, it basically costs you a day's wages, and that's basically what this Jake's saying, right? When the prices of food are going up, like you think food is expensive now, wait until hyperinflation kicks in, man. Man, people are already sighing and crying about gas prices, food, and now they can't fly anywhere, and that was the previous video we talked about. A man shall desire to go into a city. You just wait until these devils, systematically, and they are purposely doing this, systematically and selectively, causing this economic system to collapse, and selectively, getting these people to crash out and hurt one another. It's so they could ultimately usher in that their digital system, right, which they are currently pushing right now. It's just not made mandatory yet. You see other brothers post videos about people, man, getting that microchip, man, that charagma, right, that RFID microchip inserted underneath the skin. That's what we're heading to. All right. All right, so yeah, I'm just gonna jump a little bit later. Right. Yeah, right here.
To feed their families, there's going to be a real conflict here. And it's something to really think about. I hope you guys are doing the best that you can to prepare. There's some, I don't know if that's, people are reaching a point where there's going to be a lot of desperation. And the Strait of Hormuz, I think people are underestimating how significant it is. The amount of fertilizer that comes out of that region, a lot of energy that comes out of the region for the fertilizer is significant. And a lot of these countries are going to be struggling to feed their population. It's going to be a ripple effect. And even when that begins, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to end very quickly, because what could happen is you can have food shortages, really high prices, and then you have crime. You may have criminals targeting factories, warehouses. You can have criminals targeting even farms. And if that happens, it could create a ripple effect where people who produce food may be incentivized not to do so, because what's the point of producing food if you're just going to get robbed? And then that's going to make the situation even worse.
All right, so that's basically a breakdown on what he said using the scriptures, right? So basically, right, it's gonna get to the point where things are gonna get so expensive that people are gonna rob each other, right? Let's get the book of Ezekiel, chapter 4, verse 16, right? This is what the Lord's doing here, right? And this is to basically to rebuke Israel, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, right? Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 16. Moreover, he said unto me, son of man, behold, I will break the staff of bread in Jerusalem. And it's not talking about the place, man, because remember, Jerusalem, is Israel, man, is a people before it's a place, as the scripture says, and they shall eat up bread by weight and with care, and they shall drink water by measure and with astonishment. Why? Because we're soon getting close to to the stores, right? The places where people buy food. We're getting close to them rationing the food, right? That's why it says you'll eat bread by weight and with care, and shall drink water by measure and with astonishment. Because is because people is because we're soon getting close to to them rationing the these foods out, right? Second Ezra chapter 6. So yeah, Second Ezra chapter 6 verse 22. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, and the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. Right? Is because of the of this third world brewing in Iran, and the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Supply chains are being broken, right? And they're talking about even if they were to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the side effects of what it did is not easily recoverable, man. Things won't be the same. Because why, man? These supply chains, right? These factories, man. They had or refineries or whatever. They had to go to a halt because they're not receiving those supplies or goods. So the economy is definitely suffering from this, right? And now if this when because when this keeps continuing, right? You're eventually going to see what, well, storehouses, man. Your grocery stores or whatever store you go to, they're gonna ration out items, right? Especially especially foods, right? You already starting to see them, rationing out, how much people can buy meat, and you best believe, right, when that MOTB rolls around, right, they're gonna say, oh, you have eaten your too much meat, right? That these devils are gonna use this to control what you buy, on what you buy or purchase, right? So even if you do take the MOTB, right, and you think, oh, you're gonna live good, you gonna have something to eat, right? You like remember, man, these devils will still make you suffer on top of the fact that if you do take that chip, man, you will suffer thermonuclear missiles, right? And I'm speaking to you, Jakes, because these devils and these heathens, they can't repent anyways, man. If you Israelites, man, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, if you take that RFID microchip, you will suffer the most horrible, painful death, imaginable before you get reincarnated into the kingdom. So just remember that. Yeah, yeah. Anyways, right? So and he talks about people are getting desperate, right? Right? Robbing, stealing, pillaging other people to get that resources. There's because of the lack of bread, lack of food, right? And that's Second Ezra chapter 15, right? Verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. And when people stand up and fight against another with swords in their hands, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. In the course of their actions shall stand their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able to, right? Flights getting delayed, flights getting canceled, right? Right. Right. These airline companies, they going bankrupt. They going out. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their house with the sword, and shall spoil all their goods because of the lack of bread and great tribulation. And that's where the fuck we're heading to, right? And he also talked about how these people, right, they're gonna get desperate, and they're gonna be invading, these companies, right, right, and that they might. Yeah, actually, let's replay what he said again.
Food may be incentivized not to do so because what's the point of producing shortages, really high prices, and then you have crime. You may have criminals targeting factories, warehouses. You can have criminals targeting even farms, and if that happens, it could create a ripple effect where people who produce food may be incentivized not to do so because what's the point of producing food?
Yeah. So these factories, these warehouses, man. You best believe they're gonna go after the CEOs, whoever's in charge, right? Right, because these people are starting to realize, man, that these elites, man, the ones that are controlling everything, that they're the fucking problem, right? And that takes us to Job chapter 20, verse verse 22, and it says here, in the fullness of his sufficiency he shall be in straits, every hand of the wicked shall come upon him, right? And that word wicked goes into the Hebrew word ayamal.
Strong's H 6001. A male.
Ayamal, labor, or suffer a wretched one. The workman. The working class. The so your average everyday Joe, man. They get fed up. They're gonna rebel, and they're gonna go after these CEOs, man. These people in high positions, right? Right, making decisions on what food to ration and sell, man. You best believe this is gonna come during when shit hits the fan, when people are in desperation mode for food. So so these are the that's gonna come to pass real soon, right? And that's why it's important that you, Jakes, right? And I'm speaking to to the hopeful elect. And that's why you should be your mind should be focused towards the Lord, repenting, right? Right, as in turning back, not 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 dwelling back into your folly, or whatever, and or in indulging in whatever sin, man, whatever it may be, lust, pride, um sloth. I'm just naming a few, right? But whatever it is, man, as one brother posted, right, you need to what, adapt, right, and overcome that, make adjustments, make changes, or whatever you need to do, man. So your mind stays focused on the Lord, right? And was that involved, right? Praying, fasting, studying, man. Just necessary stuff that we need to do, and for the ones that can make videos, right, make videos, right, and of course, right, if you're amongst the brothers and amongst the camp, fellowshipping with the body, right, taking instruction, taking reproof, right, and instead of like bucking up, doing whatever the fuck that you think you can do, right, because why, man, even during the time of Yahushua, right, and during the time of Solomon, and even and of course during the exodus of Egypt, right, you always had those Israelites that always want to rebel and do their own thing, right, and what happened to all of them? They got killed, they got destroyed. The Lord took them out, right, got rid of them, right. That's why the book of Sirach, or Ecclesiastes chapter 2 verse 2 says, "Set thy heart aright and constantly endure. Make not haste in the time of trouble," right. So what, man? So what does that mean, man? Whatever hardships we face, man, we got constantly endure, right? Right, and if you're amongst the brotherhoods and you have an issue, man, and if you are sincere, man, speak to them, man. Of course, I'm speaking for myself. If if you have any questions, or whatever, man, they can guide you, they can help you. That's what the body of Yahushua is there, man. You, you, to help what, set your heart, set your mind right, so you could be focused on salvation, and not whatever the fuck's in the world, man. So I'm just getting off the lesson right there. Hope this lesson has been edifying and exhorting and uplifting, to you sincere Akib and Akwath. And with that, I'd like to say, Kal Halayim La, Abanawa, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, Bashim Rukakadash. Double honors and respect to my apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and taught us his truth. I would also like to say much love, peace, and salutations for the Lord's elect, the whole flight in 1/3, your brother Salah. And with that, I'd like to say, Shalom.